Wow, how cool is that? Right, anyone who's watching this on YouTube, you can have a bit of a wait because I'm not actually going live until 9 o'clock. In fact, maybe I should stop this because sounds as though the sound is coming out though. Anyway, we go live at 9 o'clock. This is just to get the ball rolling, to make sure that all the systems are working. We've got a live going out on LinkedIn at 9 o'clock and the live starting for YouTube. Clearly, if you see this as a recording, it's going to be edited to take out all this fluff at the beginning. Still trying to find my way around these systems. It looks as though it's okay. We'll see if we can. Can I add in a? No. I'm just wondering whether or not I can add in a countdown file, you know. Let's see what we could do here. Don't really want you to look at me all this time. I'll have a look at my notes, perhaps, see what happens when I bring notes forward. It's a bit of a weird thing, to be honest, doing LinkedIn Live. I think the thing I've got to realize for the future is probably that LinkedIn Live has a bit of a lag. Facebook Live, sorry, YouTube Live has something a bit more lively going on it. So 3 more minutes, folks, 3 more minutes. Anyone who's watching on the YouTube Live, just chill out, just relax, go make a cup of tea, starting on the hour. This is going to be a very uninteresting few minutes. I'm looking at my clock and I've got 8:57 here in Central Europe. We'll just go and make myself a fresh brew and I'll be right back with you. Don't go away. Ugh. Well, hello, folks. This is Martin here from Inspire Coaching. Topic today follows the poll that I did on Monday, which is about avoidance. Well, the poll, to be fair, was conflict in the workplace. And if you think about conflict in the workplace, it happens, and it happens really through a complete misunderstanding of how things are going. Bit like my understanding just now about how LinkedIn Live works, and I was hearing myself come back into my room here a few minutes after the broadcast. I'm still getting used to the technology. Forgive me. So the topic on the poll was: do you go for the conflict, or do you just let it wash by? And believe it or not, there are a frighteningly large number of leaders in organizations that I come about who overtly state they hate conflict. You may be one of them. There's a rather large body of people who say that they hate conflict and actually would avoid it. Now, the opposite to that, I guess, could be I love conflict. And I have known on rare occasions people to stimulate discussion by being the devil's advocate in the room and stimulating conflict just for fun, even if it goes against what they would normally be thinking about. So let's think about that. In context of a behavior of a leader, avoidance is it tends to be the person that shies away, can't talk about something, can't get into the conversation. Conflict leaders in this high avoidance place are characterized by a true desire to harmonize and minimize tension in their teams. Now, in my younger self, I didn't like I don't still don't like conflict. I'm not saying I love a conflict situation, but I have to admit that in my younger days, I did say to one of my new leaders coming in, taking over the team, that I might try and diffuse a situation with humor. And anyone who knows me could see that as being, yeah, it could work. But how do I always know what humor is to some people? Sometimes my humor could be someone else's offended. So humor is a risky strategy to try and, but also in that space, I was saying I avoid conflict. So if you think about that again, what leads to, what causes the avoidance of behavior, this avoidance behavior in leadership? Um, the thinking is it could be just a couple of different factors. Leaders have their own intrinsic fear of conflict, and we can come on to that shortly. They might worry about addressing issues directly, and that if they did directly uh, go into that issue, it could actually lead to more problems and harm the team's morale overall. That fear often drives them in steer clearing of tough conversations. The downside of that is really that those leaders that avoid those tough conversations are stacking up a whole host of problems later on. Everybody in leadership is aware of the 4 or 5 stages of how teams develop, from the forming stage to the storming stage, the norming and performing. And you could take that to high performing, different levels of uh, trust and psychological safety take you into the high performing space. Now, in the forming space, we all come together, and generally motivation is quite high. People are thrilled to be part of the team. They look forward to collaborating, words that are used but often not seen, that collectively bringing together the best outcome for the team. Unfortunately, what tends to happen is most people are working for themselves and arguing about who is right rather than what is right. So when you have situations like that, so you, in the forming stage, you kind of starting to get that contract with each other. But inevitably, that moves into a storming phase. And the word storming and the word conflict, as someone pointed out on the LinkedIn poll, are kind of they're very high energy words, aren't they? Conflict reminds just puts me in the mind of proper fighting or war zone situations. Conflict, storming, big energy, big storm, something rattling around. The reality is a different of opinion. The reality really is, particularly in the forming, storming, norming, performing phases, storms erupt when there's a different understanding of what's going on. I may think, as I joined this team, that my role is to deliver ABC or to connect various people or whatever it is. But when I get there and I start doing it, I find that there's a crossover or there's a lack of clarity about what my actual role is, or all sorts of things that come to light after a verbal agreement has been made in the forming stage. So really, leaders need to look at this phase and this kind of conversation as clearing away any confusion and misunderstanding. That's not really difficult, is it? It's and I wrote this in on the LinkedIn. It's a lovely phrase that came from the Apple TV show Ted Lasso. Worth subscribing just for that. Even if you do a free month trial or something, you can binge watch this. It's terrific. There's one little moment stuck out for me. I mean, lots of moments stuck out, but one in particular where Ted knew he was going into a conflict situation, a rather heated, let's say energized, passionate discussion that somebody held a view that was different to his. And that's all it is. And he hunkered down, he stuck his hands in his pockets, and he turned around, I think it was to Nate, and he said, "What is it I need to learn here?" Wow. What is it I need to learn here? That's saying, I don't get what's going on here. Please help me understand. And then through your perception and helping me see what you see, I could then see things differently. And I could learn something. Many leaders go into conflict situations thinking they have all the answers, or even stepping into that space where they believe they should have all the answers because they're the leader. But they're also human beings. And as human beings, they may have thought they had the answers, but the environment they're now delivering the answers into is different. So they don't have the answers for this situation. So let's learn from it. So another consequence of avoidance behavior in leaders is this ineffective decision making. Now, I touched on decision making in a previous live, which may or may not still be on LinkedIn or wherever, because I don't fully get the technology yet. But leaders who avoid conflict can struggle to make tough choices, and opting to compromise, and compromises that aren't always in the best interest of either the organization or the team. The old phrase, you can't please everybody all the time, is certainly true. What we have to do is, okay, I might not like what you're saying, but I understand it. And from a pragmatic point of view, recognize it's the best for the team might be a good way to move through this. Communication challenges are also prevalent among leaders with this sort of avoidance behavior. Leaders can often sugarcoat messages, making things seem a little bit sweeter than they might otherwise be. Dodge the uncomfortable decisions. Sometimes, and I have seen this, where they will actually get somebody else to do what's considered to be the uncomfortable thing, the dirty work, the stuff that they would rather not be seen doing. In fact, skillfully allowing a subordinate, one level down, to deliver the bad news to 2 levels down, while making themselves look as though they're supportive of the employee, not the manager. And it's all orchestrated and behind the scenes, but really can be seen through if you look carefully. While they may think they're making and preserving harmony, because here I am, look, I'm the boss's boss, and I support you in all this, they could be hindering the team's growth and development. And the more people see that within them, the less trust they have with the team, and therefore all the other bits and pieces of high performing teams disappear. Now, how does this manifest itself? I mean, how do leaders get into the position of being a leader if they can't make tough decisions and so on? Often it's not always seen until it needs to be seen. And sometimes that can be a little bit too late. But the roots of avoidance and the roots of keeping things sweet come from a long way away. They come from, in my experience and my learning, they come from a way of being brought up by parents, primary caregivers, whoever you think is looking after you in those early years. So let's go back to those early years. And no, I'm not saying I blame the parents, because the parents are doing everything they can, that they possibly can, let's say in a loving and caring environment, to support you and your needs. But parents are parents. Parents are adults with adult problems. And as children, even as old as 7, we still don't understand what an adult problem is. We haven't got what I learned to call it the critical faculty, the broad understanding of what's going on, in order to put into perspective what we're seeing going on. So as children, particularly 3, 4, 5, we recognize that we can talk a bit, we can communicate a bit, and we think everything's right with the world. And these people that care for us, get us up in the morning, feed us, and put us to bed at night are there for us, which they probably are. But they're there for each other too. And in that space, some things aren't met. So what happens? Well, as one trainer I had beautifully put it, said you sit there as a child and there's an argument going on, conflict, call it what you like, same sort of thing that happens at work. And what the infant, you as your younger self, can't fathom is what's going on. And so you take it upon yourself that you must have caused the problem. So you do everything you can to keep things sweet. And this is how beliefs are formed. You see something happen, you take a decision in that moment that something's happened, you recognize the conflict or the argument or whatever it is, and think it's your fault. And then you put into place or recognize other moments as they come along, and you're there and the same things happen. So you confirm in yourself, well, it must be my fault because I'm here and they're doing the same thing. Then you have a belief about not liking conflict. It's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but it kind of works for most people. And most people recognize that something like that happened. What we can't do as young children, we can't look at that situation and rationalize it, and think about, well, my goodness, look, there's one human adult trying to impose their values and beliefs on another human adult. And it seems that the one who's being given the values and beliefs doesn't want them or recognize them or doesn't agree with them, and is letting the other person know this. And there's some big energy going on about it because they're both passionate about their values and beliefs, which of course are true. But you can't get the other ones to see it. What would have happened if Ted Lasso had been there and or the Ted Lasso listeners said, okay, tell me, I don't understand. What do I need to learn here? And he brought the temperature down, and he brought the calmness back into the meeting. If you stepped into a more heart brain coherent state and just talked it through, Well, I'm sure things would have been resolved a lot easier, a lot quicker, and maybe one or both of those people would have learned something. And it's a tip that you can actually utilize in your daily life, at work, and at home, to try and learn from the situation uh, rather than beat each other up and try and figure out who is right. Try and figure out what is right. The conflict resolution generally, and you can go on all sorts of courses for this, is the process of addressing and resolving disagreements and disputes that arise between individuals and groups. So sometimes you can get in a team, particularly if you've got a quite savvy team member, they can start to garner support for their point of view. And then you're faced with not one to one, but one to many. But in that space, finding solutions to these conflicts in a peaceful and constructive manner is the goal to get a more satisfactory outcome. Conflict resolution is crucial both personally and professionally. And um, one of the other things that I do, uh, so humanistics, leadership work styles is a fantastic tool, and avoidance comes up there. But also, I use the Clifton Strength Finder, having been a Clifton Strengths certified coach, well, Gallup certified coach for many years now. If you don't know it, it's a self assessment, takes you about 20, 30 minutes to do. And you figure out how it basically it's how you do things. Now, there are some people, and I'll go back, there are 34 different talents or themes of behavior to express how you do what you do in the workplace. If you're thinking of workplace situations, actually, if you think about it, you do it all the time. You prefer that way of working, and that leads you to not only the best results, but delivering more of what you want to do without burning out. Top tip, really don't need to burn out. One of those 34 is harmony. And when you take the assessment, it ranks the 34 in preferred order. So your top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are your most preferred ways of working. Harmony is one of them, and it's one of the. I'm not going to say it's a fairly common top 5. I've seen it a fair bit, and people kind of a little bit uncomfortable about owning it. So some of the other talents are like analytical and activator and strategic, and seem to have, for a lot of people in the workplace, a much more masculine, positive, striving, leadership type quality about them. Harmony implies just keeping the peace, just, well, whatever, at any cost. Let's keep the peace as much as we can. Um, People who are exceptionally talented in harmony, so they would have it in their top 5. I'm just trying to think. I don't think I've seen anyone who's had harmony as a number 1 theme, but they're skilled negotiators. These people really need to be on part of a team. People who have harmony in their top 5, I applaud you. They're skilled negotiators because they look for consensus. They don't enjoy conflict, of course. Like I said at the beginning, no one really enjoys conflict, but they rather seek areas of agreement. So they'll get people together, and rather than look for the differences, they look for the agreements. I was reminded of a fabulous tale of a coach who went into, told me this firsthand, so I'm telling it secondhand. It wasn't me. Who went into a room. They are a white lady, and they went into a room full of non-white people, and well, there was a friction. These were non-white teenagers. To make it worse, she was a more mature lady, and there was a friction. There was a big elephant in the room, and what she ended up doing is going to one of them and saying, "You look as though you've got brown skin." Oh, The room went quiet. I guess maybe you're from Mexico or something like that. And went up to another one and said, wow, you look as though you've got black skin. Maybe you're from wherever. Or maybe you've noticed I've got white skin, which everybody had. But no one was saying it. They're all a bit fidgety about it. And then she said, but I wonder, have you ever wanted something, maybe for a birthday or celebration or something like that, and been disappointed that you didn't get it? And most of them put their hands up. She said, yeah, me too. And in that very skillful harmony way, managed to find the common ground, something that they could all relate to, regardless of the color of their skin. And then took that particular group, that lesson, onto doing amazing things. So looking for areas of agreement is really, really a good thing. There's little to be gained from friction. There's little to be gained for arguing. So you seek to hold these things to a minimum. When you know all the people around you are holding a different view, you trying to find common ground is the best way. People like this coach steered away from the confrontation and moved into that harmony place. It tends to be a guiding value. If you think about it, if you can take yourself into a workplace where there has been some conflict, just think about how much time is wasted by people trying to impose their views and values on other people. Persuasion. I mean, influence is one thing, persuasion is another. We'd be much more productive if we kept our opinions in check and looked for consensus and support. So I've learned a lesson from somebody else today, Craig James, who is doing a LinkedIn Live later on, and did a LinkedIn Live test earlier on, just to make sure the platform worked. And if Craig, if you're watching this, it worked. It's beautiful. But the other thing he did was, and is going to do, he didn't do it, is going to do in his LinkedIn Live, is take you off into a Zoom room. So maybe one day we can have a continued chat after the LinkedIn Live, and we'll whisk ourselves off into a Zoom room and see what else we can discover about avoiding conflict and actually embracing the differences, looking for the commonalities, looking for the consensus of where we are, and finding out what is right and what is the best for the team and the organization rather than who is right. I hope the rest of your day works really, really well. I hope you find consensus in all things you do, and in that space become much more productive, being at your very, very best every day without burning out. If you'd like to know more, let me know. You know where to find me in my LinkedIn profile. And I look forward to having another LinkedIn Live at the same time, same place, same day next week. Until then, cheerio.